Road podcast, telling the stories of the South Texas racers from the past and present.
Hello, my name is James Parks, and welcome to the Thunder Road Podcast. We're filming here at the Top Hat Signs and Design Studio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Top Hat Signs and Designs, 112 Bodies, Proline Fabrication, and of course, S&S Monuments. If you or anyone you know is interested in sponsoring our podcast, please see the email in the description below. In this episode, we have...
Hey, Dad, I'm getting kind of tired over here. I'm going to take over the podcast.
You're gonna take over the podcast?
Yes.
Oh, man, why is that?
We're going to have a Father's Day special Thunder Road podcast.
So this is the official Father's Day episode of the Thunder Road Podcast, hosted by the one and only Pistol Rose Parks. All right. Well, the show is yours.
Tell us a little bit about yourself in racing.
About myself in racing? By
the way, I'm interviewing you.
All right. I actually started racing when I was 16 years old. I built my first race car, which was a hobby stock, and I raced at Rio Grande Speedway. It was my grandmother's car. It was a '78 Dodge Magnum. I gutted it and built the roll cage in my dad's backyard, and that's kind of how I got started. I had a go-kart before that, but I wasn't allowed to race it like you do. We just kind of drove it around the house. So that's how I got started. My dad, he raced cars, and that's how I kind of got into that deal. But my first race car was a '78 Dodge Magnum, weighed 3,800 pounds.
How many race cars have you ever had?
I've had a lot. I don't know that I could count how many race cars I've had, but I've had quite a few. If I had to guess, I've probably had 15 to 20 cars at different times. Some of them I built, some of them I raced, some of them I just bought to resell. So I've probably had 20 race cars to my name.
What is your favorite race car you've ever raced? Yours, friends, customers?
My favorite race car?
Mine sucks.
The obvious answer to that would be Sox, because we won a lot of races with Sox. We had great friendship with Sox, but that's probably...
I even named Sox.
You did name Sox, but to be quite honest, Sox probably wasn't my favoriteest car. My favorite car was probably the first Destroyer chassis that we ever got for my dad. It was a car that we put together for Pawpaw, as you called him. That was probably my favorite car, and the reason for that is we were at a time in my life that Dad was living here. My dad was living here with me, and he got to help me build that car basically from the ground up. Daryl built the roll cage, and we built the rest of it. As a family, your mom was involved. Jerry Walters was involved. Hector was involved. Jesse Cantu was involved. That was probably my favorite car. I got to drive that car for my dad and won a bunch of races with it. But back then, just the camaraderie. So the easy choice would be Sox because we won a lot of races. But deep down, my favoriteest car was my dad's white factory stock, which is still racing today. J.C. Paul has that car.
After a night of racing, what is your favorite thing to do?
Well, go home. Go home and take a shower. Honestly, after a night of racing, I kind of like to drive home slow and relive what happened. Rethink what happened. Think about what I could have done differently. Think about what I should have done, whether it was racing, myself racing or you racing. I kind of like to take a slow drive home and just kind of understand what just happened, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Papa raced before you did. Tell me your favorite story about him racing in his race cars.
My favorite story about him racing in his race cars. Mm-hmm. My dad loved trophy girls. I have a bunch of photos in photo albums of my dad when my dad was winning races when he was a young man winning races, and he always had the biggest smile with trophy girls. So I think that's one of my fonder memories of Dad. I was very young when my dad was racing, so I don't remember a whole lot of it, but I remember Dad built a car that was like an IMCA modified style car when they first started racing at Rio Grande Speedway. I remember Dad's buddy Bob Doty flipping down the front straightaway, and my dad running down the front straightaway to make sure he was okay. I remember incidents like that.
What is more fun to you, watching me and Rebel race or you racing?
I smoke less cigarettes when I'm racing, but I enjoy watching you and Rebel grow. I enjoy watching you and Rebels racing transpire. I enjoy that aspect of it. So in general, I think I probably enjoy watching you guys more than myself racing. I enjoy working on the cars, but the racing side of it, I think those days are becoming fewer and far between.
Okay. My 2 surprise questions.
2 surprise questions. All right. What are your surprise questions?
Nobody knows these questions yet. What is your favorite chip?
My favorite chip to eat. I really like jalapeno chips. So like the chips from Subway. I think they're like the Miss Vicky's chips. I really like those chips.
You can get those at S&J's.
S&J's has them too. So that's a plug for S&J's. So if you ever want jalapeno chips, S&J's has them.
Okay. What is your favorite drink?
My favorite drink?
To eat with jalapeno chips.
Dr. Pepper.
Drink too much Dr. Pepper.
Actually, S&J's has Mr. Pibb. So if we're going to do the S&J's kick with the jalapeno chips, I'm going to have to say Mr. Pibb.
Okay. And thank you for letting me take over your podcast.
Well, thank you for taking over the Thunder Road podcast on this Father's Day edition. Thank you very much.
And now this is my channel.
And on this Father's Day edition of the Thunder Road podcast, I have Tanner and Tripp Whitmire. These guys are going to tell us some stories about big car racing, stock car racing. They're going to tell some stories about some go-kart racing and just some stories about their lives and kind of tell us where they came from. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome Tanner and Tripp Whitmire. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show.
Yeah, James, thanks for inviting us. Looking forward to the podcast and the Father's Day special.
Yeah, this Father's Day deal, my dad passed away not too long ago, so it's kind of a big deal to me. My dad was huge in my racing, and it's good to see that obviously your dad was involved in racing. You yourself are involved, and then you got your boy involved with it too. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you've come from and what you do. What does Tanner do? Because that's what everybody wants to know. We see you traveling the world on Facebook. I think you might be a double agent, so just kind of clear the air.
What does Tanner do? Yes, that is that's a question. It's funny if you would ask my wife. My wife will still say, "I have no idea."
She's probably not lying.
No. What Tripp? What does Mom or you say that I do for a living?
Scamming.
They call me a scammer. Essentially, it was actually one day we were driving around the truck and had Jude Allgaier as well in the back seat. He was down, and Jude asked, "Tripp, what's your dad do?" Or he asked me, "What do I do?" And Tripp goes, "Oh, he sits in front of a computer all day. He's always on the phone, never gets off, and that's just what he does." And Jude's initial response was, "Oh my God, you're a scammer."
It's like a Nigerian scammer, right there.
Yeah, you're a scammer. So now the joke is that I'm a scammer. But no, for a living, what pays the bills, race car bills, is I work for a GPS supplier, and we supply GPS receivers that make tractors drive themselves for agriculture. And so we cater directly to tractor manufacturers, and I lead the global sales team. So that's where when you see Facebook posts and I'm in Europe or down in Australia, I'm either visiting customers or helping my team out.
Do you speak the language? Do you
no.
speak any other languages?
No, I try to speak English.
I really wanted to try that Babbel deal. They say you can learn a language in like 24 hours, but it probably wouldn't work.
No. For me, I'm doing good enough just trying to keep up with English. And fortunately, my sales team, they depending on where they are, they're all speak multiple languages. And so I just...
So your family has been in the farming business for multiple years, as we discussed earlier, but that's not necessarily why you got involved in what you're doing now, though. You want to tell us how that came about?
In a way it is, in a way it's not. So as you mentioned, yeah, farming, I would maybe classify me as third generation farmer, grandfather farmer. Dad still farms today. And kind of growing up, it was, do you want to be a farmer, Tanner, the rest of your life? Do you need, I don't care if you do or you don't, but you need to go get an education.
You need to make a decision.
Yeah. And, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, that was when the GPS technology started coming in the farming operation. And Dad started investing in it and had it on the equipment. And so I took an interest into it. Well, then, I guess the short answer to your question, how did I arrive at where I'm at today is really luck. I really consider it more luck than anything. So, I think a couple weeks back, I was telling you the story where I was actually at a friend's, another farming friend's son's place, and it was one high school, maybe a Friday night or Saturday night, maybe some extracurricular activities hanging around the barn, and there was a radio station tower across the street, and took and decided to climb it one night. And
how tall is this tower roughly?
I'm gonna go with maybe 1,000 feet tower. No, we didn't climb all the way to the top of it.
You can tell us you did. We wouldn't know any different.
Didn't climb all the way to the top of it, but did climb a good ways. And let's just say maybe we took some souvenirs off the tower.
Did you have flip-flops on?
I had flip-flops on.
Of course you did.
Have flip-flops on right now as well. No, cameras can't see it, but yeah, always wearing basically flip-flops or racing shoes. Yeah, climbed in flip-flops, come back down. Well, then, of course, there was other people there that witnessed it and experienced it, and so news traveled around town. Well, then that was whenever a local internet company was starting up and needed somebody to climb a tower. And
you were the man.
Yeah, had a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I know a guy that'll do it without a harness." Next thing you know, they called me up, and I'm climbing a tower, and I think I was up and down in like an hour.
So your story basically was your resume. You didn't even have to we already knew what you did. We know you can do it, so get after it.
Yeah, exactly. How much are you going to cost? And at that point, I really wasn't, I think I was 16 years old. I didn't even think about money, really thought about money at the time. And then climbed up and down, and they handed me, I think it was about $800. And I was like, $800 for an hour's work? Where's your next tower? Yeah. Like, I'm signed, I'm committed now. And so that was also about the same time the ag industry was needing people to climb towers and put up what we call base stations, but it was communication device going between a tower and tractors, and one thing led to another. I started working for the local John Deere dealership and climbing towers for them, and then ended up deciding I went to school, got a GIS degree, and then came back home, worked for the farm. And
where'd you go to school at?
First, right out of high school, I went to Texas State Community College there in Waco and got an associate's degree. And then that's also where I met my wife, Kristen, and she followed me back home, and we dated for about 2 years. And not only did she follow me back to Portland, but worked for Dad for a little bit there, and then that was also kind of the time that I thought I knew a lot better. Right out of college graduates, I know what I need to do in my life, and so made the decision to leave the farm and start the journey that I'm on now, and went the corporate world and been working in the corporate farming industry world now for, I guess, going over 15 years. And so that's where Kristen followed me to Colorado. We lived in Colorado for a couple years, and then got married while we were in Colorado, and then moved back
Here
home.
you are. So basically just being a kid, just being a young man, having a good time, some extracurricular activities, got you up on a light tower, and really has set you on your career path of where you're at now. We don't always recommend that to some of you younger folks out there.
Don't recommend it at all.
Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We're not going to ask him about his record. We probably don't want to know what some of that stuff is. But no, Tanner's a good guy. Let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about your dad, Ronnie. Mr. Whitmire always has a smile on his face. I don't know that I've ever seen that man with a frown, whether the car was wadded up and loaded with 2 wreckers or not. I've never seen that guy not smiling. So let's talk a little bit about him. Tell us what you know about his racing days, and obviously that kind of progressed into you, and then that brings this young man into the picture. So tell us a little bit about Ronnie himself.
Yeah, so for those of y'all local, if you ever, as James described, definitely always has a smile, always happy. I too very seldom see him without a smile. He's really best friend. There's probably maybe two to 3 times that I can really think of that we've really had heated arguments. Could be anywhere from I can name off the top of my head. Really, one was whenever I was in his truck on the farm and accidentally jumped a bar ditch or a culvert and did a Dukes of Hazzard in his truck and maybe bent the frame a little bit, and the truck was fairly new.
He stuck the landing.
All 4 tires and kept on rolling. Wow. He wasn't really upset about the truck. So going back to he's always smiling, right? He really wasn't upset about the truck itself, but more importantly, on the landing, everything that maybe was in the truck that was on the dash fell to the ground, but really he was more upset with the ice chest was flipped over and all the contents inside the ice chest was shooken up right before 5 o'clock. So that's really where he was upset. Yeah. About the really most of that situation. But no, been next to him, on the farm operating. I can't say enough on what he's taught me. I could only imagine I could teach half of what he's taught me to Tripp, being on the farm every day. And then, so it started off farming. We had a farm in Odom. This is kind of what led to the racing. So growing up, being young, I remember a little bit about him racing, and remember watching him race. I want to say 3 or 4 years old whenever he finally chose spending more time with me and my sister and family and work and hung up his driving suit. Well, we took over a new farming property outside of Odom and just happened to drive by one day, and that's whenever it was the curation of Odom International Speedway. So there was a long time ago they made before the walls were there, before it was just a round circle in dirt. We pulled in one day and somebody allowed me to jump in their go-kart and hammered down, went out there, and I didn't really crash, but I remember that there wasn't a wall and I didn't make it through the turn, and I flew off the end of the track and landed in the field and high centered the go-kart in the field and couldn't go anywhere. But
Odom International was pretty much in Mr. Witherspoon's backyard.
Yeah.
And I did make the journey out there about 2 years ago, and the track still exists. It's very much grown over. There's some remnants of it, but no, Mr. Witherspoon had that go-kart track. I did race go-karts there a few times when I first came to Corpus. We used to have to try to outrun the train because if the train came across, you couldn't get to the track. So there were some fun adventures out there. So after you high-centered the go-kart at Odom International, where did we go from there?
Yeah. So the next Christmas, so I was that summer, and then that Christmas, Santa Claus brought a go-kart and put a go-kart underneath the tree, and it was kind of history from there. I remember,
when you say a go-kart, what kind of go-kart are we talking about?
It was an old Margay cart, and believe it or not, I didn't really know this until a few years ago, but Troy Dotson, so Megan Dotson drives factory stock. Her father, he used to race go-karts a long time ago, and it was all the road course stuff. And I remember the story, but vaguely on how my dad ran across it, but essentially it was in a garage sale. And
had to have it.
Yep, picked it up and brought it home. And I remember the first time I drove it, I was wearing a jacket, and you have the motor sitting right there, and back then we didn't really have the good chain guards or anything like that, and the exhaust pipes right there, and I come in and I have feathers just flying, and I'd already burned a hole in the jacket because it was it was Christmas time, it was winter. Feathers are just flying everywhere. And, what's going on? And
I'm on fire.
Yeah, I tore that go-kart to pieces.
Do we still have the go-kart? Is the go-kart hanging in the barn somewhere?
No, I don't remember what.
If anybody has seen Tanner's go-kart, please let us know. We'll get a description of it on the Facebook page later on. But if you've seen Tanner's go-kart, let's get it back.
Yeah, it's definitely you'll know the difference. You'll know it when you see it because it's going to have cracks all in it that's been rewelded, and it went through ditches, and it was a racing go-kart that was used and abused,
multi-purpose,
like a yard cart. And it drove through the same stuff as a yard cart would drive through.
So you jumped from the Margay. You started doing some racing from there, and then I would assume around 96, 97 is when y'all started maybe doing some local at Odom and then traveled, or did you do any more stuff in Odom, or where did you go from there?
That's where I was headed. So real fortunate with my dad and his interest in racing. So started off first year racing locally in Odom. Went out and we won the track championship first year, and then from there we took off and started running. Back then it was known as the IKF, or International Karting Federation, and I can't remember how many races it was, but I remember like when I was in fourth grade one year, I almost got held back because I'd missed so much school in chasing points and chasing all over. So we raced. Dad took me all over Texas, Louisiana, and we won the national championship points 2 years in a row. And then from there, we still raced go-karts heavily, but we never really raced for the points or chased the points. We always missed too many races. I got older, started playing sports as well. In addition.
Life things got in the way.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated to know this, though. So when I was growing up, my grandpa, we didn't really have internet back then. It wasn't around. But my grandpa used to get like Speed Sport News. We used to get deals, letters in the mail that kind of said where the races and stuff were going to be, so that we knew where we were going to go. How did you guys know where these go-kart races were at? Because y'all are in a little farm town. Like, it's not. This is not something you think like, hey, there's a world-class go-kart racer in the middle of Taft.
That is an excellent question. Because today, if I didn't have Facebook, I would not know where to race at.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. Like, how did those old timers know where to go?
And back then, whenever we finally got internet, because we lived out in the middle of nowhere at a farmhouse. When we finally got internet, it was the old, I know Tripp isn't going to know what this sound means, but you're toot, 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 as the modem's connecting.
AOL.
Yeah.
Do you know what an Atari is by chance?
No.
All right.
But I want to say it had to be through magazines and actually, a printed schedule.
I'm just curious because that's always fascinated me. The rainouts, I remember calling tracks trying to find out, are we racing, are we not racing, that kind of stuff. So I've always been curious about that.
I remember calling. Remember a lot of times you would show up and you drive 8 hours or 10 hours and it
didn't happen.
It didn't happen. And also remember another luxury today when traveling is a GPS on a phone. Thought it was awesome whenever you just had like the TomTom or the GPS that you put on the dash. But
make sure you update those quite regularly.
Yeah, I remember stopping in and having to get maps and start. And Dad'd be driving. We'd be going through Houston or some big city where you can get that spaghetti of turn left, turn right, and which way do you go? Do I go this way? Do I turn right? Well, look on the map. Dad, I'm 8 years old. I don't even know what part of the map we're on. Like, what's that little scale on the bottom?
I just want to race my go-kart.
Yeah. You woke me up from a nap. What do you mean?
So we've gotten a little older. We've progressed in our go-karting a little bit. What happened in 2000? 2000 looked like it was a pretty big year for you.
Yeah, so after we stopped chasing the points, we still raced, and we tried to definitely expand into bigger races and hitting bigger races. So we a couple of those we'd go out to Arizona. Well, actually, we started out going to Tulsa. Back then, it was the Tulsa Shootout would allow go karts. They don't do it anymore now. It's mainly just all midgets and micros. But started going to Tulsa, then we left and started going to Arizona, Phoenix. Well, that was about an 18-hour drive. Well, then from there we flipped and started racing in Daytona. And we would, Dad would haul me out to Daytona over Christmas break. We're never home for Christmas. That 2 weeks you get out for school, we were always on the road.
How'd that work out with Mom?
First couple of years she was there with us. She would follow through, and then I think she was also hoping to get a family vacation out of it and want to do something other than see a racetrack. And after she realized that we weren't going to see anything else but a racetrack, she started staying home.
Erica had the same situation when I was traveling a bunch. She said, "I've seen every racetrack, but I've seen nothing else." Yep. So I understand that. So what happened at the Daytona deal?
That's probably one of my favorite racing memories. So the day after Christmas, they'd have 4-cycle day, and you got to run on the NASCAR track. And so I was 13 at the time, and the track that you did was the 24-hour Le Mans course on the NASCAR track, which is like 3.7 miles, I think, a lap.
And we're not in our Margay go-kart anymore.
Nope. I'm actually in for any of the.
There's a lot of karters that listen to this show.
Yeah,
so don't get your names and your specifics wrong, because they're gonna tell us.
So I'd be interested if people actually would remember this go-kart or are aware of this type of go-kart. So it was an old Trick Typhoon, and it was a left turn. It was made for left turn racing dirt. That's primarily what we raced with go-karts. But that one time a year we raced at Daytona. Well, this kart, instead of the frame rail going underneath on the right front underneath your tie rod, it went over. And so I was out there racing asphalt track, making right hand 180 degree turns with this big old bar that went over. And that was also when I got to understand or appreciate what bump drafting was. So we got to go on the track, and we did aerodynamic the body, had a full pan underneath and big old bubble. And I don't know who the kid was, still don't know today, but me and him hooked up and he would bump draft me and push me around the track. Well, we would fly past people. So we're doing over 100 miles an hour down the back straightaway, and I'm 13, inch off the ground in a go-kart. I remember, the last lap just happened where we went through the road course. He passed me through the road course, and so I bump drafted, pushed him on the last lap. Well, just like, and I'll never forget it, just like the Daytona NASCAR was at Daytona, and the guy in the back just pulls out and passes everybody, pulls out the draft and slingshots. Like, I was able to do that with a go-kart, and we were coming to the finish line and had 10 or 12 carts, which 10 or 12 carts on the NASCAR track is like little Matchbox cars on this desk.
Yeah.
And I was able to slingshot and end up, I think, finishing 5th overall. We didn't win, but still top 5 out of 50 carts or so. It was that was a fun experience. And then, but that one really was just the hobby while we were there. That was just an extra race that we did. The main race was the go-kart races, the dirt races down the road, where they'd have a little over 1,000 go-karts show up a day. And in my class, there was, I think that year, 130 carts, and they took 30 to the feature race, and we were able to qualify. And I think we were the first person from Texas to actually ever make the race.
That's pretty cool.
And we started 29th out of 30. It was 0.2 of a second between first and 30th from a qualifying standpoint. And we passed the person that won the race, but got hung up and ended up finishing. We hopped a guy, ended up finishing I think a top 10 out of it. But it was definitely
but still from the small farm town to being able to say that you were racing at Daytona, whether it was a go-kart, a yard kart, or whatever,
Yeah.
you still turn laps there. Like most
Yeah.
guys only dream of that. So was that the end of your go-kart career from there? You still chased the go-karting a little bit more after that? What?
Yeah, no. So, still continued kart racing. That was also about the time AJ Foyt the fourth. So at the time he was living in Houston, and he was racing, and so me and him, we raced a lot together, and bounced around. And he was a couple years older than me, but I always tried to race up when I could to race against him, and it was just a fun experience. I'm still friends with a lot of those guys that I raced with, and actually today there's a lot of them that I raced with that are racing karts, like Cody Smith, for example. He was one of the guys that we never really raced together, but we were always at the racetrack together. He always raced a couple classes above me, but just that experience. So raced all the way till I was 16. We got a modified when I was 15 and started racing modifieds, but because of that experience and those memories was really why I wanted to have Tripp and Braddock's as well. So two boys, but really wanted to get them into racing just from those memories. Yeah. Braddock's jumped in and tried it and said it wasn't for him. So we do other stuff outside of racing, which is totally fine. I've learned, I wouldn't say I love, but I've learned that there are other activities outside of racing. That,
I hear there's other things like fishing and bowling and basketball and stuff, but I don't understand that stuff yet. I've had many a folk tell me it's coming, so we'll see. Why you've brought this young man into the picture? So obviously you got to travel with your dad doing the go-kart stuff, and now it's you and him traveling because y'all aren't just racing locally. So Tripp, tell us a little bit about some of your experiences. Tell us a little bit about your go-kart racing. We're going to come back to your dad's big car stuff down the road because he's got a ton of stories, but we want to hear about you. We want to hear from you about some of the highlights and the lowlights of your go-kart career. And possibly, I think there's some bigger things coming down the line. I don't exactly know if that's this season or next season, but we'll get into that too. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Let the world know who Tripp Whitmire is.
Yeah, one high moment in my life was last year at Millbridge. I was with Darren Hart Jr.'s son and
nephew,
and me and him running down the trail, and my dad was drinking beer, just sitting there watching us, and then spring break, went up there, was trying to bang the boards off first lap and flipped it, jumped the cushion and hit the wall and flipped it, and yeah.
So when we were hanging out, and you were hanging out with Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s nephew, Wyatt Miller, where were we at? What were we doing?
Racing go-karts at North Carolina.
So as a family, y'all traveled to North Carolina. Obviously, you've done a ton of racing in the local area. L87, the Stars event, I-37 Edna. I assume you've hit all the local tracks. You got some track championships at many of those. Let's talk about those a little bit. Let's talk about the local racing scene, and then I want you to elaborate on the Millbridge deal, because you didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to drive a go-kart and run to Millbridge. So let's talk about the local side. Tell us about that deal.
Yeah,
So you got four track championships at L87. Is that where you turned your first go-kart laps, Dad? Is that where he first did that, or?
Yeah, actually,
I'm gonna assume
you
it was
remember.
the
You
old
remember
track.
your.
oh yeah.
You remember when you received your go-kart
Yeah.
and then what that experience was like? You want to tell the. You want to explain what your.
How did you get your
experience?
go-kart? What happened? Was Ronnie smiling, or was your dad smiling? Dad was smiling. He had flip-flops on.
Yep.
Probably so.
Basically, it got in the go-kart, and I just full throttled it and didn't look back or anything. And I just went.
But we were. What was there? Was that a special day though?
No, there's in a corner. What?
You don't remember? Like it was your birthday, maybe?
Oh,
Seventh
yeah,
birthday.
it was my birthday, yeah.
Was it a surprise?
No, I figured it's coming soon.
Something had to be coming down the line with wheels and an engine. That's the way it goes. You're a Whitmire, right?
Yep.
All right.
Like
So
the
Daddy
flip
got his
stuff.
go-kart on his birthday. Roughly how old was he?
It was his 7th birthday. So it kind of just like deja vu with me. It was about my 7th birthday. Christmas was, I turned 7 just shortly after that. So kind of same era, same mind mentality standpoint. Took off, and at first, I remember watching him drive electric John Deere tractor in the race car shop, and there's just enough room to drive around the car. We were putting together a new Western Fire Aluminum modified, and had parts all over, and he just had enough room to make a lap,
Make his circle.
but the turn radius was too tight that he would run into something. Where he learned that if he let off the gas, the rear tires would lock up and he would slide, and so he could complete it. And he just sat there and just burned it out. I'm like, you're like 3 years old. How did you figure that out?
I think you said that was banging the boards earlier.
And so that's what really got me interested. Oh man, we have something here. Like, and then so we got worked on getting a go-kart for him, unveiled it to him for his birthday at L87 Speedway, and then your first couple of times out, I don't really remember it pedal to the metal. I remember maybe a little bit more slower transition. Or do you remember it differently?
Differently.
You remember it differently? I remember it as lap traffic, but
I want to
That's
say
what
we
you
sat.
are.
I want to say we sat in the go-kart one time and didn't go race. Was
Yeah.
that-
Oh yeah, I was asleep and just woke up and
Yeah, there is one of those things. Asking Dad, like it's, and I'm sure you're learning with Pistol and soon to be Rebel.
handfuls.
Push your patience to the limits, and that was one thing I had asked Dad. Was I this problematic, or it's not necessarily a problem, but like was the frustration very easily set in with me? And Dad'll joke now. He goes, if that was me, I'd already given up. Like, but I'm sure different time, different being a grandfather versus a parent. I'm assuming you probably have a little bit more patience from a parenting standpoint, maybe not. But that was one thing I was joking about with Dad, like, was I this bad? And because they'll definitely
say yes.
I wouldn't change it for anything for the world, but
No, this kids can
patience
test
is-
your patience for sure. And something that I had to learn the hard way was I just assumed they knew.
Yep.
I've put seatbelts on since I was 16. I've put my helmet on since I was 16. I just assumed the kids know that, and they don't. They don't know any of that. And that's my responsibility to make sure to teach the kids that stuff. But yeah, you assume a lot of things, and you just have to stop and realize they don't know. They're only going to know what you teach them. So it's hard sometimes because this is what I tell Erica. I make sure the cart runs, I make sure the cart turns, and I make sure I get it to the track. But once the kids are on the track, it's all them.
Yep, 100%.
Sometimes getting them onto the track is a bit difficult, but it seems like once they crest over and get on the track, whether they're going 3 mile an hour or 30 mile an hour, most of them get the hang of it.
Yeah, I'd say, kind of to your point, there was definitely some nervousness. Would you say nervousness?
Yeah.
That and then once you're on the track,
I don't care. I just send it.
Send it.
I would say you thought you were invisible once you were on the track. And now do you still get nervous before strapping in or anything?
Nope. I just send it and go.
Just send it. So before you thought you were invisible on the track, now some of your competitors think you might be invincible because you're pretty stout out there. You get out there and you wheel that thing. I've seen you thread the needle. I've seen you bang the boards, as you say. But you are not afraid to drive that go-kart. And I don't know if you got that from your grandpa or your dad or your mom, but I'll give you credit. So let's talk about some of your other go-kart stuff. So we raced L87. We did South Texas Speedway, also known as South Texas Race Ranch. I get that mixed up all the time, so I say both names to cover my ass. and the Stars event. So the Stars event, as you've heard on previous podcasts, that's a huge deal for the local go-kart racers in the Coastal Bend, not just Corpus, because there's a lot of folks that come down there. You just didn't win like 1 or 2 or 3 races or 1 or 2 championships in that Stars deal. You kind of walked away with like a wheelbarrow full of trophies and stuff.
Yeah, because the 2 seasons before the first season they did it, I had probably more wins and everything. And then this year, couldn't get the senior cart working. And yeah, I won the last 2, but I could have won the first 2, but thanks to the crew chief, it's bad.
And who's the crew chief?
You.
Oh, that's what I thought.
And on this Father's Day version, we just threw Dad under the bus. No, as a crew chief myself, I will tell you, it's nerve-wracking sometimes. Dads at the go-kart track, I'll come and ask Tanner questions all the time. I think he laughs at me most of the time because I'm confused and smoking 6 cigarettes at once. But all the dads and the families at the go-kart tracks normally get along. They all help each other. But when we see these kids go out there and we see the progression from where they started to where they are, like, it's really cool to see how all of that works. So on the Stars event, you walked away with a wheelbarrow full of trophies. How many championships did you walk out of there with?
4.
4. Okay, so we did that, and then we made the trip to Millbridge. Is that kind of how this transpired?
Yeah.
And what got you to say, hey, I want to go to Millbridge? Did Algar just kind of rib you a little bit? What happened there?
No, actually, that was really Tripp. Tripp was watching with Kyle Busch's son, right? Brexton, watching his YouTube channel and seeing races, and then I started watching. I was like, well, actually, that looks like
kind of cool.
Yeah, that looks like a neat place. So we started putting everything together. Now, rules there are significantly different. Different motors, different tires. Track is 3 times as big. 8th mile, high banks.
Is it wide track?
Yeah, real wide. And but we started putting everything together, and I was talking to Jeff Allgaier, and he was like, "Hey man, let's." I told him we were thinking about it, and he goes, "Count me in. I'll pay the fuel. Done. You're in."
Look at my hauler.
And so we started buying everything, and then I misread the dates, and so we were going to go, so we went this last year, so we're 23, we went in 2022, but we were going to go in 2021. I misread the dates, and so we were going to have to miss the first week of school once we got everything together, and that was also during the supply chain pandemic stuff, and so it was just bad timing, and so I felt bad for Jeff because he'd bought motor and everything, and that was also about time that they were transitioning out of karts into micro sprint. So I bought the motor back from them, and but still had every intentions. The trip was still dying to go, and so we went for his birthday last year, and I also felt bad for Jeff on missing the dates the year before, and so I called him up and said, "Hey man, I got this other cart. Jude's more than welcome to come with us and run the backup cart.
It's go time."
And really, it was more that I felt bad about the year before and how things worked out, and less about just getting his gas credit card and paying for the bills to get us out there. But no, we turned that into a family event. And so we made the trip out there. So it was 22-hour drive, I think, from here to there.
Long haul.
And then from there, we detoured back through Tennessee and went to
Titanic.
Yeah, I went to the Titanic deal. So this is one of those trips very rarely happens where there is something outside of racing.
And Mom wasn't there.
No, Mom was there. Mom did go this one.
Oh man, spoiled her.
Yeah,
she's good for like 10 years now.
So we did turn this event into we got to go see the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and then on the way home for Braddock's, we detoured and went through saw Titanic and what was it? It was in Tennessee. Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and then came back. But man, as far as Millbridge goes, I don't know if I had more fun there or if Tripp had more fun racing there, because there was just if you haven't heard of Millbridge, it's essentially it's a go-kart track in the NASCAR driver's backyard. They race in the middle of the week, so that way the NASCAR drivers and
Wednesday
dads can be
nights.
there. And so, what's you want to talk a little bit about just who all you raced with and what all went on there?
Yeah, 2021 we were supposed to go, and I was supposed to race Braxton and Kyle's son, Owen, and
Kyle Larson's son, Owen.
grew up and was old enough for it and put me in box talk. They didn't be there.
Yeah, the next year. So last year we didn't. You were too old. You had to move up a class because of your age, and didn't get a chance to race with those guys. But you still raced with other drivers.
What?
Like Wyatt Miller, that's still our junior's nephew.
But I didn't get put in the same feature.
Yeah, it was kind of a worst case scenario for us. So we showed up the night before for a practice session.
But then get practice and
Practice session rained out.
Oh,
and then we had just qualified.
you're relying on the crew chief at this point again, huh?
Yeah, and
The one that messed up at Stars events.
I was fast. I was quick in my group for qualifying and came out in the feature. I was started 16th deep in the field, and I got my whip. I cracked my whip to the top 10, I want to say, or the top 7, and coming on the back stretch, coming to the check, and I got spun out, and I was mad, but went with it, and whoever that was.
I'll remember you for next time. So yeah, it was unfortunate. We still had a great time. Props off to the track for being able to because it rained again the next day as well. But it was Tripp's first time on the track. So again, never raced that type of motor before. Never raced on those tires before. By the way, you have to purchase the tires from the track, and you have to mount these tires in front of the track. They take tech to a whole nother level. And his first time on the track was qualifying. So they had like 50 carts, I think, 45, 50 carts. And it was, they didn't actually race. It was straight qualifying, did time trials. And then from time trials, you made the show. And so we locked in at like 16th. First time there, first time on the track.
That's not bad.
And then we had one time to make an adjustment, so we went from qualifying straight to the race. And so he never had a chance to practice or really drive, and just again, he's never been on that
Get a feel for it.
on that big of a track. He was going a lot faster from a speed perspective, and just. And you could see it. He started adapting as the race went on. He kept getting faster and faster, but he learned that I got to get close to these guys. When I go to make a pass, he learned that he started rubbing off speed, and then he'd go to the turn, they turn around, they pass him back down the straightaway. And once he started getting the hang of it, and he didn't know he was at the time, but drafting. So I mean, the track was big enough there. He could pull up on the draft and pull out and start passing. It was fun to watch him, and just the progression he did in the 20 laps that he's ever been on that racetrack. And then while I'm sitting shoulder to shoulder with Kyle Larson at the fence, watching the kids out there race.
Yeah,
so.
no, like at the Chili Bowl, you see those guys. You see Larson, you see Abreu, you see a lot of those big names. And to me, they're just regular
Normal
racers.
people.
And when they're at the track like that, I'm sure there's a couple folks trying to get autographs. But for the most part, they're there for the kids. They're there to race. Sometimes they're racing carts of their own. I get that. But for the locals, you obviously touched on the engines are a little different than what we run. Obviously, they don't run the lawnmower tire that we run.
No.
The facility, the track is wide and fast, sounds like. But I assume you just took his regular cart that you had run at Stars and that you had run at L87 and just made the adaptations to those. Is that primarily the style cart that they had there? Or are they running something different than we are here?
They basically ran QRC and PRC, mostly PRC.
Mostly PRC carts.
Yeah, So back when I raced karts, I raced Phantom karts as well, PRC, Phantom Racing chassis, and also Ultramax for the go-kart and enthusiasts out there. So right down the road, Millbridge is like 2 miles or 3 miles down the road from Phantom Racing Chassis headquarters, Wiggins Kart Shop.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of wherever you go racing, if there's a local provider, right, you see abundance of those karts, kind of similar. Same.
But for the local racer, if they wanted to make that journey, it definitely could. You
Yes.
just have to change some things, just like a big car. You got to kind of adapt to the rules, but your bones of the sport you can take with you.
Yep.
Cool
and,
deal.
and we weren't the only people from Texas there either.
The Hawpains from the Stars event,
Yeah.
they go up.
They got 3 or 4 carts. I don't.
They
Yeah.
bring I would say 20 carts. That's just a example. They actually bring like
They have about 3 or 4 go-karts,
5.
but they also they have quarter midgets as well, about 3 or 4 quarter midgets that they take out there. But they go out there and live for the summer.
Oh.
And they stay out there
I got to
for
be
the
at
summer.
work in the morning, so I don't know
Yeah.
about the whole summer deal.
Yeah.
Well, as far as your go-kart experience, so you went to Millbridge. You had a huge experience there. You learned some stuff. I'm sure we're going back, probably taking what we've learned to make that trip a little better for the next time. I would assume. I guess we still have the tires and we still have the engine. We're ready to go back. We learned some things. We're gonna bang the boards up there. Is that what we're gonna do?
I hope so, but
I think Tripp's ready to go back. I don't know if my pocketbook is ready to go back. That was even with Jeff splitting the gas bill, it was still a big gas
Well,
bill.
while we're talking about the pocketbook, you got some folks that have helped you. So you want to tell us about your sponsors? You want to give a shout out to the sponsors that have helped Tripp Whitmire along the path and the journey?
yeah, I want to thank Sam's Ford, First Community Bank, Towboat US, Costa Bend, Airboats, Revolutionary Insurance Groups, Garwin Internet, Rick's Hector's Bar.
Hector's Bar.
Rich's Billiards.
Yeah,
I believe
Rich's
it is.
Billiards.
All right. You got them all?
I think so, yeah.
Don't forget Mom. Don't forget Mom.
And Peggy Bundy, my mom.
There you go. We got it out there. Peggy Bundy. I'll never forget that. Somebody called her Peggy Bundy. I looked over and said, "Did they just call you Peggy Bundy?" She was proud. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. All right, Tripp. Well, this is the Father's Day episode of the Thunder Road podcast. So now we're going to go back to your dad. So your dad was telling us his story from the go-karts to the big cars. So Tanner, it's back on you, buddy.
Yeah, so switching from go-kart, so said you got first modified, so jumped straight from go-karts into the IMCA modifieds. I think at the time it was actually a UMP modified that we started racing up at Goliad and bought an old Smiley's chassis from Lawrence. Maklachek was first car, and thought in memory that or in appreciation I would race my dad's number. So all through go-kart racing, never raced. Never raced with his number. Started out with the number 1. It's funny. It's kind of funny how the numbers progress. So started out with the number 1, and then showed up to the track. They're like, well, you're not the track champion. You can't race the number 1. And so we started with 01. So we put an 01 on front of it. Well, we just put an 01 in front of it. So that's how we got to 01. And then raced that throughout go-kart racing. Jumped in the car, and I was like, all right, I'm going to change the number up. In memory of Dad, or in appreciation of Dad, I'll drive the number 19. So if you've ever remember from the old CC Speedway days, Dad, he was driving. I remember him in TIDA late model, always the number 19. I think maybe sometimes he would drive a 91, depending on the number or the entry or where he was at. But primarily it was either a blue, white, or I think silver number 19 car. And so we raced that for I think the first 2 years, and just did terrible.
Ronnie was your crew chief, wasn't getting it done, huh?
Yeah, it was yeah, my crew chief at the time.
You know a little bit about that, don't you, Tripp?
Yeah, you shouldn't be talking.
Yeah, my crew chief always blamed it on the driver, and the driver always blamed it on the crew chief. And so I was like, oh, man, the problem's the number. I don't have any luck with this number. So we threw that number out and put a 01 back on the side of it. And
Did that save the day?
not initially, no. It didn't. But we did find better help. We you know, I was very, at the time, I would say more frustrated than anything. So Dad raced a lot of asphalt. Didn't really know much about dirt, and it'd been so much time had gone past, and technology had changed so much. He really, not that he didn't want to help, but he was having to learn just like I was.
Yeah. His old school ways weren't necessarily holding up anymore.
And so so whenever I would turn to him for help or I'd get frustrated, I'm like, all right, I'm done. You set the car up. I'll just drive it this weekend. And
did you ever tell him you were going to bang the boards?
No, I never terminology I never used. No. Funny though. So, kind of to that point on banging the boards, I was like, the car's pushing. Well, you're not driving it in deep enough. And so the next time I go on the racetrack, I drove it in deep, and then I didn't, at the time, I didn't bang the boards, but I did try to knock down the front straightaway wall. And I said, it still didn't turn. I drove it all the way to the exit. And he goes, you drove it in too deep.
So there's a fine line there.
Yeah.
The crew chief didn't explain that to you.
No.
There's a fine line.
And so we actually never met them before, but they parked next to us at Goliad one weekend. I think it was one of the Shady Oak Halloween Havoc races or something, and they were running racing dirt work cars, and they just happened to help us. And so that's what kind of, you're looking through some pictures earlier, and turned into Dirt Works and started. So we made the change, and Dad bought me a Dirt Works car, and we started racing Dirt Works. First one was a DW8, and then we got to a DW9, and just started getting better help.
Yeah.
And then we went to a racing school, Shaw Brooks Driving School, and went up there, spent 2 days in the classroom, and come back. And first race weekend back from the school, won the first modified race. I was, I think, 16. I was either 15 or 16 years old. Won our first modified race, and just education, learning goes a long ways.
The people that help you, that's huge in the racing program, because especially if you don't know what's going on or you don't have an understanding, or you hit a roadblock, if you've got some help and you've been to some of those seminars, I've been to a few of those, and there's a ton of knowledge in those deals. So I tell everybody, if you get the opportunity to go to some of those schools, it's well worth doing.
Definitely.
Okay, so you got out of the Smileys into the Dirt Works. You won a modified race. How old were you when you did that? Roughly,
I think I was 16.
16.
First modified race, and so we were used to traveling for go-karts, and so we wanted to keep doing that. It wasn't that we didn't like racing at home or anything. It was just traveling. You get to meet new people, make new memories, and learn new stuff.
You get to race against different folks.
Yeah.
And you're only as good as who you race. So if you race the same guys every weekend, you kind of learn their characteristics and their traits. So when you go to a place that's not your house, as they say,
Yeah.
you learn some things the hard way, but you come away with some knowledge.
Yep. And so we started traveling a bit. One of the races we went out to, let's say at the time, was the Talladega Ice Bowl one weekend, and it's called Ice Bowl for a reason. It was like 19 degrees that one morning
frothy.
when we woke up. It was icy. Yeah, it was definitely cold. But we did that one weekend, and then so I also went off to college, and was very fortunate. So when I was at TSDC in Waco, had some friends there that buddy, he worked in the railroad, and he let me keep my race car at his house. He was off Friday nights and Saturday nights, and worked the other rest of the week. And so he'd load up, and we'd race Waco Friday nights, and we'd load up and go to Kennedale or something on Saturday. And then at that time, it was when IMCA points were real big.
Yep.
And it had rained a bunch. There was a lot of rain out. So one of the tracks in Dallas started around on Wednesday nights, and so we raced Wednesday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. If we still had a car, that was one of the things. If
you've been known to be kind of hard on equipment,
if
you've told us a few stories already, and there's more to come. But Tanner Whitmire has been known to be hard on equipment.
Yeah, if Tripp's experience of racing cars goes anything like my experience, I'm just gonna say we just need to give up, because there's no way my pocketbook is gonna, even with the added support from our sponsors that Tripp named off, Sam's Ford and First Community Bank, Revolution Insurance, Towboat US. Those guys couldn't do it without them. But still, I know I put a dampener. I definitely know now that I'm paying for a lot of the bills that.
It adds up.
It adds up very, very quickly, and there's no way I can compete. I'm very fortunate and very appreciative of Dad's financial commitments.
So we did some dirt racing, and then looks like we did some asphalt stuff in the infamous TAM series. Cody Beto put that series together. It was a neat little series. Tell us a little bit about your adventures in that. And also, that kind of brings your dad back into it, because now it's asphalt. I know you had said earlier that some of his older ways may or may not have been working, but now he's kind of in his wheelhouse again. Now, I guess you could say as a farmer, he's back in his tractor. Now he's back in his field. So how did your dad like that part of that?
Yeah, so so right after college, as I started getting into actually having a JOB and having to go to work, we still raced, but didn't do it as every weekend or as much as we did. And when we said, I'd moved off to Colorado and then lived up there for a couple of years. And when we came back, the modified stuff just started it was still there, but it wasn't like it was whenever I'd left. Motors had cost 3 times as much, and everything had gone outlaw. And that was when the limited modified series, or Southern Sport Mods, depending on where you're at, what you call them, started coming to the picture. And so they
were an inexpensive alternative at the time.
At the time. Key point, at the time. And
we have cars for sale, by the way. Just letting you know.
We sold the modifieds and got a Western Flyer limited modified. And the first year, thought we were onto something. And man, I don't know. We just that first year in limited modified, I didn't have fun. I didn't have a good experience. We were tearing a lot of stuff up, or I just felt like we were getting run over a lot. And that was about the time Cody Beto started the TAM series, and that was kind of a thinking of Dad and racing. Like, he always did asphalt, and I was like, man, I really want to do that asphalt stuff. Let's give it a shot. And so we turned to Dad. All right, we're in your wheelhouse. Man, I just don't really remember what happened. And it was kind of, well, you're on your own. I'm just here I'll make sure there's gas and the oil's changed. And he's always, ever since with cars, he's always been running gear, motors, make sure everything's operating from that standpoint. I've always focused on the setup. I can tell you how to make the car turn left. I can let you know if the motor doesn't sound right. But as far as knowing much difference between the crank and the camshaft, like that's just, you start getting out of my comfort zone there.
That was my dad's deal. My dad said, I'll make it run, you make it turn.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that. And some of them older guys, man, they lived and breathed those small block Chevrolets, those old Fords, those tractors, John Deere tractor engines. Like, I remember my dad just being able to work on anything. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what it was, what color it was, or what it was in. He had the savvy to work on those engines. And I've built a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I look back on those guys, like, they didn't have the technology we have to Google, how do I do this? Or what is this? Like, they just figured it out on their own. So the TAMS deal, how'd that go for you?
So not knowing what to do, talked to Chris Swinson and actually took the car up to Chris, and Chris got me in the ballpark from setup wise, and did our first race at CC Speedway. And
this is with the Western Flyer?
This is with the Western Flyer. So we took the dirt car and
But I think that was normal. I think most of those Tams cars
Most of them were. Yeah, most of them were. Really the Southern Sport mods, I mean, they were designed for dirt. They didn't really have an asphalt class or
Not yet.
Not yet. And
That's coming.
so first race, was at CC Speedway. Just really went out there to make laps. I had tried running a dirt modified there years before. They kind of tried to do a similar deal.
It was dirt tracking on the asphalt, if I remember. They did some stuff at CC Speedway,
I made it through, I think, the first practice session or maybe second practice session and banged the boards, as someone would say.
It was easy to bang the boards at CC Speedway.
Ripped the whole deck off the car, everything, and we just loaded it up and never. That was my asphalt experience.
Was Ronnie still smiling?
No.
Yeah, but at the same time, he was like, "I told you we shouldn't have been here."
The deal about CC Speedway is, I say this all the time, the guys that race there regularly, like, they were gladiators, because once you got in that little bull ring, there was no getting out. And you had to get up on the wheel, because racing the bottom, or if you were racing banging the boards, as this young man has said, you had to be on the wheel because there was no way out. It was fight or flight for the most part.
Jumping on.
And so basically made some laps. I think we finished top 10. Well, then that year was the start of the TAMS race, start of the TAMS series, and we missed the first actual series race, but made the second one, and that one was up at Central Texas Speedway in Buda or Kyle. Track's no longer there today. It was a great facility, but
it was really hot.
Yeah,
it was really hot.
And it turned out Tripp was still in a stroller. I want to say he was 2-3 years old. Probably even younger than that. And so I was there with Tripp and Kristen, and then for whatever reason, my dad couldn't make it that weekend, and it was just us. And well, I didn't really expect this, but going asphalt racing, like, there's people there with stopwatches. People got crews with stopwatches, and they're coming in and making adjustments. And I'm by myself for the most part, and asked Kristen, "Well, what did it look like?" "Oh, look great, babe. Awesome. What job well done. You look amazing." And like, thank you for the encouragement, but really, how did I look? And so we
now they have My Race Pass, and it'll give you like the lap time. So when your wives lie to you, like, there's at least someone telling you the truth. Unless you ask my wife will burn you down in a heartbeat and say, "Hey, you sucked." So that's just part of it.
So we ended up qualified 7th, and that was actually, they did a lot of effort that weekend. That was probably the biggest TAMS. I'd say the biggest TAMS event out of all the series. And they brought in, like, Howard Willis. They brought Howard Willis in, and he's another one talking about racing schools. I did a racing school with Howard Willis a long time ago when it was the driving school out of Houston, but Kel Westover, I didn't realize it at the time. I had to go back, like, wait, I beat Kel Westover. He was there, but Kel Westover was there.
He was driving the 44 drywall
Yeah,
car?
44 drywall back then. I think he was also known as Kel Drywall. Nobody really knew him as Westover. But we started 7th, and I think we took the lead about lap 11 and ran away with it, and led off basically the remaining laps. We finished at like lap 40, and they had a lap sponsor. So if you led like lap 10, lap 20, 30, 40, most laps, hard charger, like, they had all these extra incentives.
You racked up the contingency awards.
I think I got all of them except 2. One was the hard charger, and it was the hard charger, I think, passed 7 cars, and I passed 6. Well, I was only 7. I couldn't pass anymore. And then I can't remember the other one, but on top of all that, this big weekend was they also had Randy Rogers. So they had a big stage, and so they had a big crowd. And after the event was over, after the race was over, they brought us on stage with Randy Rogers, and they gave us the big check. And this was kind of back whenever the big cardboard checks weren't really just passed out, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of a prestige
It was
deal.
a prestigious deal. Yep.
Well, so they're giving me this check and they're writing my name with a dry erase on the check, and they go, here, we're gonna put your name on it. You're gonna go up, take a photo with it, and then you're gonna give it back to us. And no, this check's going home with me. I don't care what it is. I'll buy the check, whatever. Like, I won this one. It's not coming out of my possession.
They weren't mass produced like they are now.
No. And so they that was kind of one of those milestones. Then like, oh, I gotta win me a cardboard check. So that was the first time I got me one of the cardboard checks. And but yeah, there was a lot of asphalt guys there too, and I think they were like, where'd this dirt guy come from?
Where'd this guy come from?
Yeah.
You got some attention, good and bad. So when you got out of the car after you won the race, Kristen, did she say, oh, you look great?
Oh yeah. Oh, amazing, babe. Amazing. I told you did good. I told you were fast.
That's cool. So after that, you did some more racing. Looks like in 2014 you won a Capital City Challenge race. Is that a dirt race?
No,
asphalt race?
that was another TAMS race.
Okay.
So the following year we won, I think out of the series, we won 2 or 3 out of, I think it was a 7 race series. We won 2 or 3 of them. We finished second to Joey Heineman.
The legend.
Yeah, I think he beat me by like 1 or 2 points. But
I've been trying to get Joey to come on this show, by the way. He needs a little encouragement. He can help me out with that.
I can try to push him over the edge.
So we did some racing there. 2017 looks like you won the South Texas Shootout.
Yeah, so we left the asphalt scene, went back over to dirt.
Same car.
So in the middle of that though, we did buy a new Western Flyer, but still same dirt. Curtis didn't really change anything from as much as I asked him to. He didn't really change anything for me, and it was straight dirt up. But it was a new Western Flyer. We ran it. Took and switched back to dirt, and then came back. I think it was 2017. If I'm not mistaken, I think you won that night too.
Yeah. No, I won the feature. I won the big show in the Pure Stock deal that year, and then we were supposed to go to Samesford and make a commercial. And Hector swore the commercial was on TV, but I never saw it. So we at the time we both had big checks though.
Yep.
And Hector wanted to run off with them, but we wouldn't let him.
Well, so kind of going in that, wife Kristen, she wasn't able to make that race. Tripp was there, and it was, I made the race. I think I started like 8th or 10th in the feature, and Kristen was like, all right, I'm coming up there to watch. And I'm like, there's no reason to come up to watch. Like we're not running that great. We did make the show, but I don't see myself really moving up. And we just hit it. Car was amazing. Track also rubbered up. It was like driving on asphalt. I think I might have been really the only one that was able to pass on the like underneath everybody, and was able to save the tires. And out of the 50 lap race, we I think passed with 2 laps to go, and in victory lane. And Tripp, he got to come in, sit in victory lane, wear the South Texas cowboy hat, and then called Kristen and was like, "Hey, babe." She's like, "How'd the race go?" I said, "Well," she's like, "You wrecked, didn't you?" I said, "Well."
Why would she assume that? Why would she assume that?
Well, no, we won. You did what? And I'm not there. You took pictures in victory lane. Yeah. And so we, won it. And then, so that's really, after that event, that's really when Hector and I really started getting along and hanging out. So I tried taking my big cardboard check and using it as a down payment on a new car.
Didn't work.
And he
didn't know what it was. Probably he said, "What is that?"
He did, but he made it act like he didn't. And then all of his sales staff started, "Oh, you race? Yeah. You won? Yeah." Hector always talks about racing, but
Never talks about winning.
Yeah, he never talks about winning. So anytime I'm up there, I always joke around with the staff, and it's always good to give Hector a hard time.
Ford's a huge supporter of the local racing. Hector was on our previous podcast. It was quite an interesting podcast. So if you have a chance to go back and listen to that, It was much like dropping a bouncing ball. So just try to keep up because it just goes all over the place. But it was a good show. Okay, so we did that. Tell us a little bit about the infamous L87 race. So we had some big names. We had some locals. We had everybody at L87. There's more people in Petronia, Texas than I think ever existed. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, that was definitely a fun event. I was really surprised to actually get the phone call. So, Lauren,
I told him to call you.
Oh, that was you're doing well. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Nobody called me, but I told him to call you.
No, that was just an all around fun event. So Lawrence gave me a call and said, "Hey, we're putting together this on demand special event, and like for you to participate. We're also doing go karts, and that was." Well, I think your second or third year racing karts.
I could have won it if I had more experience, but we ain't gonna talk about that. That's in the past.
I could have won it if I had a better driver.
Of course you know.
But it wasn't your crew chief's fault. That was the key.
No, that was your fault.
Oh, okay. Father son love. But yeah, we got to. I think we were the only father son combo. And so they chose 10 limited modified drivers and 10 go-kart racers. And they also, out of the 10, they brought in Bobby Pierce, late model driver, and Kenny Wallace as well. And so between, and then just handpicked just some amazing talented drivers. So Howard Willis, of course, made the list for anybody that you guys know. Howard Willis, another
Legend.
legend. So we're actually, if you haven't seen it, celebrating Howard's 50 years of racing. So he's hitting his 50-year mark, and I think they're having a special race at 105 Speedway in August. So definitely make sure to tune in from that perspective. But I feel like this is be kind of a similar event to that one. But other drivers there on the list was I just went blank, but Keith White.
I think Keith White was driving one of Lawrence's cars, if I remember right. But so folks understand this racetrack is literally in Lawrence's backyard, and it's in the town that I'm from. A population of 115. So. In this little town, there's this racetrack kind of hidden in the middle of nowhere. Honestly, it's surrounded by windmills. But we had huge local racers, legendary local racers. We had
and a participant.
We had well-known dirt late model drivers, like competitive dirt late model drivers. We had Schrader, that everybody knows Schrader. He can drive anything and everything. He has driven anything.
Not Schrader, Kenny Wallace.
I'm sorry.
Kenny Wallace.
Edit that out. We had Kenny Wallace there. Kenny Wallace has driven anything and everything.
Former NASCAR driver, Sprint Cup driver, Winston Cup driver.
We're in Lawrence's backyard.
Yeah. It's amazing. And that was and just all the extra activities that went on there. Like they did fan favorite. That's how we chose the starting lineup. So they split us up into 2 heat races, and basically your position was who voted for you. Yeah. And we, I don't know if it was everybody just picked the wrong name or what, but we were fortunate enough to also win the fan favorite. So out of people like Kenny Wallace, who has, if you look at his social media followers, like has tremendous amount more than I do, but we were able to still win the fan favorite vote out there, starting the poll.
Well, it might have been your affiliation with Tripp. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was more
name
people
recognition.
Tripp. Yeah.
How did we do in this show? How did this wrap up for both of y'all? This was father and son event on a big race night in front of, I think it was on Race on Texas or one of those.
it was published by Race on Texas. Race on Texas was there, did a great job filming. We did out of car introductions before the race. I mean, it was an
event.
It was an event essentially. And the neat part about this is, as you mentioned, it's in this little old, basically farm field, surrounded by wind turbines. You had this quarter-mile dirt track that is almost an exact replica of CC Speedway, just in dirt. They just took the asphalt off of it. And then right next to it, you have the go-kart track. So we did the heat races in the cars. Then we went and trip raced the karts.
Spun someone out, I'll tell you that.
I remember who you spun out.
Yeah, we ain't gonna talk about that one.
Let's talk about it. Who'd you spin out?
Eddie Watts' daughter.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Kyler.
Spun
Yep.
Kyler out.
So rough it up on girls. You okay with that? Spinning out girls?
I don't care if they, because I got spun out at Millbridge by one, so why not? But
You just returned the favor earlier.
Yeah.
You didn't know you were returning the favor. All right.
And so the carts ran, and then we jumped over, and then we went back and run the feature for the limited modifieds. Well, felt really confident in the limited modified. About 5 minutes before we ended practice, we I think blew up the transmission.
yeah, and then had to go get Nathan's, the 1T that Nathan drives now, and he said those spiders, but I don't believe him.
No, there's spiders in Petronia, Texas, son. I promise you.
So fortunately, Lawrence had a spare car sitting there, never sat in it before, and he was like, "Yep, it's there. I brought it just for this reason, just in case something happened," and jumped in it. Fortunate enough, like I said, we won the fan vote, and so we started on the pole. I got to make about 2 laps in it. Started on the pole. We led most of the heat race, and then Marcus ended up passing us. But
So that was kind of your Millbridge experience. No practice, just get in and go.
get in and go, and then so then jump out, make sure he's ready to go on the go-kart, and get him going, and then he finished the kart, and then jump back in the limited modified, and try to make a couple adjustments, and we ended up finishing third overall. It was and so me and Bobby Pierce were basically side by side, or I kept seeing him try to come underneath me. They call him the smooth operator. And yeah, he's definitely smooth. That was his first time in a limited modified, and my first time in that limited modified. And
It was quite a big change for him.
yeah, for sure. He's used to the 4 bars and the rake, and
yeah.
these cars just don't move like that.
So we wrapped up at that event at Lawrence's track, and like I explained to folks, that it was such a huge event for our area. People don't really give that deal enough credit for what took place out there. So where are we at now? Where's Whitmire Racing now? Where are we headed? What's up our sleeve, as they say?
Me getting in the modified.
Whoa! We're skipping fender cars. We're skipping all
Yep.
that stuff. We're just going straight to model. So what's your dad going to drive then?
Old pick, no, a Ford Banger, Bang Banger.
Bang banger.
Bang banger.
I've been demoted to bang banger.
Bang the boards. Bang the boards with your bang banger.
Yeah.
All right, so tell the world what's happening now.
If I get in the modified, I bet you he's gonna put me in a cornfield or whatever, and I'm gonna pop the clutch and run into something. But
They're a little different to drive. The pedal has to go down on the clutch to go. It's the weird transition.
I'm gonna need a cushion and an automatic transmission because I don't know what the heck I'm doing for manual.
You'll figure it out. I think you're one of those young men that can figure it out pretty quick. You're gonna come to the field pretty quick. I have a feeling. So. I have a good family friend. His name's Bob Doty. That gentleman has raced go-karts for a long time. And as a young man, I remember him telling my dad that go-kart racers become better drivers because they have to understand the karts, the twitchiness of the karts, the wheelbase, all that stuff. How do you feel about go-kart racers and the transition to big cars, whether it be open wheel stuff or whether it be factory stock type cars, fender cars? What is your thoughts on that transition? Because a lot of the young kids are very young and they are transitioning to bigger cars already. What is your thoughts on that?
You know, it's a good question. I've something that I've internally argued in my brain on when's the right move, and if it's too early, not early. There's been a lot of people I know. If you ask Tripp, he'll definitely say I'm ready to go today. It's put me in. I'm ready, but I do believe everything that he learns, not just in go-kart racing, but anything that you can drive, anything in your race, any laps you make is always
key.
Is just laps. It's just seat time. And I think one of the things that's really helped him is
iRacing.
iRacing. I bet you he has more laps than you and I put together in our racing career for my racing.
We hear that more and more from a lot of locally based drivers, as well as some bigger name drivers. You hear iRacing a lot. They're turning laps on tracks that they've never been to, that they're going to go race at. It's really that real, from what I understand.
Because I remember I was racing at Edna, and everybody does this on ice, and they get on the top side, and they don't cut down, and they just stay on the top side going to the cone. And I did that one time. Jude snuck on the inside of me, but I shut the door and I ran away with it.
So let's talk about Jude a little bit, because I just assumed y'all were going to go down the path of the open wheel, mini sprint, that kind of stuff. But we're not doing that. We're just going 4-bar, big motor.
Yep.
All right. Let her eat.
Jude wants to get into a sprint car, but those things you can lose your life. I told him, just get your butt in a modified manual through haymakers and big doors.
Haymakers, big doors, and banging the boards.
Yep.
That should be your slogan.
And where's catfishing? There's got to be catfishing in there too.
That's probably gonna be Jude. I'm gonna be banging the boards I'm gonna have no nuts whipping the little tip.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, guys, it was great to have y'all on the show today. Is there anything y'all want to talk about? I got a couple questions for y'all. Some quick questions, some Thunder Road podcast questions. Nothing you need to study for or anything. But y'all got anything else y'all want to put out there? Any other stories? Any other adventures?
No, just again, I know you got a couple extra questions, but very appreciative of having the opportunity. Tripp and I getting a chance to come just talk stories, talk about memories. It's definitely fun. Fun experience, fun to be involved in and to get to do these kind of things. For everyone listening, one of the biggest things that I love at races is people that do come by, that do come to the pits after the races, and so my seat's always open to any kid or adult that
Except Hector.
Except Hector, that wants to come by, talk, sit in the car, talk about racing. Doors always open. I really just want to communicate that, if whether I know you or not, come up, shake a hand. Love the opportunity just to talk with everyone, and really, if you see us around, like I said, we try to race. I try to race a little bit more local now, but this weekend we're gonna take a trip up to
Cartway up by Boyd Speedway.
Just down the road from the Texas Motor Speedway NASCAR track outside of Fort Worth. That's for the weekend, but again, can't do it without all of our sponsors and help from people like Sam's Ford and First Community Bank and Towboat US, Revolution Air Insurance. It's much appreciated from.
No, it takes a village, as they say. You were talking about the fans coming down and sitting in cars and stuff like that. When I was a young man, I grew up at Rio Grande Speedway. I watched my dad race there, and that was the track. That was our local track. It was a few miles away from the house, but I remember the sprint car guys coming. The sprint car driver won the feature, opened the gate on the front straightaway, and walked up and handed me the trophy. I was 4 years old. I'm 45 years old, and I still remember that today. So a lot of times just the youngsters getting to come down to the pits and sitting in the cars, talking to the drivers. So a lot of those youngins were NASCAR drivers, you know.
Yeah.
So just remember, you know, there's always eyes on you. That's one of the deals. But one of the Thunder Road podcast questions. These can be a little tough sometimes. Your greatest rivalry. What was your what was your greatest rivalry in racing? Whether it was your go-kart stuff, your Tams asphalt stuff, or your regular dirt stuff. Who was your greatest rivalry? Both of y'all.
I can answer that. That 89 right there, Stevie Whitaker Jr.
That was your rivalry or his?
His.
Well, why is that? He just wanted to run them hard, race them?
Yeah.
All right. And who's your greatest rivalry? The girl that spun you out?
No.
We're going to find her. Maybe she'll send you a Valentine's Day card.
Nope.
There's a video somewhere, I'm sure. Tanner, do you agree? 89 Motorsports, one of your biggest rivalries, and make you run your car harder, make you try some different things?
I definitely top competitor. I guess from a rivalry standpoint, I guess I always picture, for whatever reason, rivalry, someone that you don't like or someone that
I don't mean it that way. Who made you drive harder? Who made you strive harder? Because that would be my. If someone asked me, that would be my answer too. I'm not going to lie. When I was running the pure stock and they had Sean Ward driving, like I wanted to outrun those guys. And those guys made me and made my team have to be better. So as a rivalry, no, it doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It's who made you want to be better? Who made you drive and want to be more competitive with them?
I would say out of all people, Howard Willis is probably, I would say, my top choice, just from the time of me racing and really being more of a sponge. Everything was new.
Yeah.
And he taking the time to talk with me and inform me what I did wrong, or try to coach and try to
the realness of him.
Yes.
He didn't tell you did great. He didn't tell you, oh, you look great out there.
No. And but he was straight up, and his first priority was to outrun you, and that's still, I'd argue, probably still his first priority today. But his second priority was, what do you need? He was a friendly competitor.
But I think that's the racer mentality. That's 95% of racers' mentalities is, what do you need to get you on the track so I can whip your ass?
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather outdrive you and outrun you when you're at your best than at your worst.
Mine's probably Stevie or I gotta tell. I got not that much, but my main one's Stevie Whitaker.
Isn't Jude, when you and Jude are together?
No, I'll bang the boards like Jude. Jude would be catfishing, trying to fish, and I'll be banging the boards with my nuts rolled out.
All righty. Well, guys, thank y'all for coming on. It was a good show. It was it was definitely an adventure. The Father's Day version, the Father's Day podcast, Thunder Road podcast. So appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. Thanks, listeners.
Adios.
As a checkered flag flies in this episode of the Thunder Road podcast, I would like to take some time to thank our sponsors, Top Hat Signs and Designs, Proline Fabrication, 112 Bodies, and S&S Monuments. As well, the special interview by Pistol Rose was very meaningful, and I'm glad that we got to do that. As well as thank you to Tanner and Tripp for bringing their stories and telling us about their adventures. Please understand, Father's Day, take the time to give them hugs and take care of them. Thank you.